When I first stepped through the doors of the old Victorian house, it felt like I was walking into a dream. Everything was exactly how I imagined. The high ceilings, the grand staircase, and the light pouring through the stained glass windows. This place had a history, a soul, and I was finally a part of it. But that first night, something felt off. It started with a chill. At first, I thought it was just a house settling. You know how old places are, drafty, unpredictable. I even laughed it off, thinking I'd have to adjust to the quirks of living in such an old home. But this wasn't just a draft. I could feel it moving, almost as if it was brushing past me, deliberately. I checked all the windows. None were open. And then the sounds came. It wasn't unusual for a house like this to creak, but this was different. The floorboards seemed to groan in rhythm with my own footsteps, almost like there was someone following me. Every time I stopped, the sound would stop too, always just a beat too late, as if something else was moving when I wasn't. I kept telling myself it was just my imagination. After all, I was exhausted from the move. But that didn't stop the uneasy feeling that crept up to my spine every time I looked down the hallway just past my bedroom door and into the dark. There was this shadow, one that didn't belong to anything I could see. It shifted, just for a second, but it was enough to make me catch my breath. I shook it off. I had to. This was my dream home, and I wasn't going to let a little paranoia ruin it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of something tapping. At first I thought it was the rain, soft drops against the window, but when I opened my eyes, the room was dry. The tapping continued. It wasn't rain. It was coming from inside the house. I sit up, heart pounding in the silence, listening. The noise was faint, but steady, like someone was gently knocking on the walls from the inside. I told myself it had to be the pipes. Old houses like this always has quirks, right? That's what I keep repeating to myself as I try and fall back to sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. By morning, the tapping had stopped, and in the daylight, it was easier to ignore. I threw myself into unpacking, filling the house with my things, trying to make it feel like home. But the unease lingered. It was there in the way the shadows seemed a little too long in the corners, or how the house felt unnaturally still when I stopped moving. Then something strange happened. I was in the kitchen sorting through a box of dishes when I heard it again, the creaking of footsteps. This time, it wasn't subtle. It was distinct, deliberate. Someone, or something, was walking down the hallway towards me. I froze, every muscle tensing. My first instinct was to laugh it off, to tell myself I was just being ridiculous. But then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow and heavy, coming closer. I turned, expecting to see... what exactly? I don't know. But there was nothing. The hallway was empty, silent. Except there was something out of place. My keys, which I'd left on the hall table earlier, were now laying on the floor, several feet away. They couldn't have just fallen like that. I stared at them, trying to make sense of it, but no matter how I turned it around in my head, there was just no explanation. I picked them up, forcing a smile. Old house, old tricks, I whispered to myself, trying to keep my voice steady. But deep down, something had shifted. It wasn't just the house being quirky. It was more than that. That night, I double-checked the windows and locked all the doors before going to bed. But as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder, was the house watching me too? The next few days passed in a blur of unpacking and organizing. I tried to distract myself with the usual tasks, hanging curtains, arranging furniture, finding places for all my things. But no matter how busy I kept, that feeling of being watched never quite left me. It was always there, just on the edge of my awareness, like a shadow I couldn't shake. The strange sounds continued, the tapping, the creaking footsteps, always at night, always when the house was still and quiet. During the day, everything seemed normal, almost peaceful. But once the sun went down, the air in the house seemed to change, like it was heavier, almost suffocating. On the fourth night, something new happened. I was laying in bed, staring up at the ceiling, when I heard a soft noise coming from the hallway. Not the tapping this time, not the creaking either. It was humming, a low, almost inaudible tune, as if someone was softly singing to themselves in the dark. I sat up, holding my breath. The sound was so faint I thought I might be imagining it, but then it grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't my imagination. Someone, or something, was humming right outside my bedroom door. My skin prickled, and every instinct in me screamed to stay in bed, to pull the covers up over my head and pretend I hadn't heard anything. But something made me move. Slowly, I swing my legs over the side of the bed and stand up, my heart thudding in my chest. I step towards the door, listening as the humming continues, almost melodic now. With trembling hands, I reach for the doorknob, hesitating for a moment before I turn it. The door creaks open, revealing the dark hallway beyond. Empty. The humming stops. I stand there for what feels like an eternity, staring into the darkness, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But there was nothing, just the oppressive silence and the familiar chill creeping through the air. I closed the door quickly, locking it behind me as if that would keep whatever it was out. Crawling back into bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been on the edge of something that wanted me to open the door just a little bit wider. The next morning, I told myself I had to stop imagining things. I was just tired, stressed from the move. That was it. Houses like this made noises, and sometimes those noises sounded like footsteps or voices. It was all perfectly explainable. Except, when I went into the hallway, there was something I just couldn't explain. On the floor right outside my bedroom door, it was a faint outline. It was as if someone had been standing there, barefoot, for a long time. I stared at it, feeling blood drain from my face. The outline was smudged, as though whoever or whatever had been there wasn't quite human. The outline of those feet haunted me for days. No matter how much I tried to scrub the floor, it wouldn't completely disappear. It was like a stain, a reminder that someone or something had been standing there, watching me. I didn't sleep well after that. How could I? Every night I waited for the sounds, the tapping, the footsteps. And every night they came, like clockwork. But now there was something else, something worse. The whispers started softly at first, barely audible, like someone muttering just outside of earshot. At first I thought it was just the wind, the old house creaking in the night. But as the days passed, the whispers became clearer. They were actually words. I couldn't understand them. They were too low, too garbled, but I could feel them. They buzzed in the back of my mind, growing louder the more I tried to block them out. I thought I was going mad. I wanted to believe that it was all in my head, that the isolation of living alone in this huge, empty house was just playing tricks on me. But the whispers followed me. In the kitchen, while I was washing dishes one night, I heard them just behind me. I would spin around, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was never anything. In the hallway, as I passed the mirror, I'd catch a flicker of movement, just a flash in the reflection, but when I looked directly, there was nothing. And then one night I heard it. My name. Claire. Clear as day. It was barely a breath, but unmistakable. It wasn't a friendly voice either. No, there was something cold about it, something that made my skin crawl. I sat bolt upright in my bed, my heart pounding in my chest. Claire. It came again, from the hallway, just outside my door. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew I should stay in bed and ignore it, but curiosity, or maybe fear, drove me. I slowly crept towards the door, every step feeling like I was walking through a nightmare. I pressed my ear against the wood, holding my breath. Claire. The voice was right there, just inches away. With trembling hands, I opened the door, the hinges creaking as I peered into the hallway. At first, there was nothing, just the same oppressive darkness and the familiar chill. But then, just at the edge of my vision, something shifted. A shape, tall, shadowy, stood at the end of the hallway. For a split second I saw it. A face, pale and twisted, staring at me with hollow eyes. Its mouth was moving, whispering my name. I blinked, and it was gone. My breath caught in my throat as I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking. I locked it, as if that would keep whatever it was out there out. But I knew I had seen it. Whatever it was real. And it looked like it wanted me.